live. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and Notre Dame homer, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir.
In Notre Dame, a little bit of a spoiler here, Blake. They made it into my top 10. I had some people pointing out last week that I was a bit odd that me as a Notre Dame fan was favoring Texas A&M over Notre Dame. But we're back. We're live. You also put Notre Dame in there, which makes me very happy.
They don't deserve
nothing. Then why did you put them in there?
Because there's nobody else that I could put in there. I can't put SMU in there above them.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't do that. Then I would have been screaming during.
Joe, I mean, if you watch our segment on YouTube last night about the college football playoff ranking that came out, I don't think that SMU deserves to be up there.
No,
okay, not as high.
Neither does BYU.
Well, I mean, they got to put BYU up there just because. So if they win the Big 12, then they're going to be a 4 seed. You can't have a. I mean, that's why they put Boise State at 12, Joe. I mean, let's just be real. Boise State's going to sit at 12 the entire season. They're going to sit at 12. I mean, let's call it what it is until a team
unless
jumps
they lose
all
to
the
someone.
way. Who's that going to be to?
They don't have anyone else remaining. And maybe Colorado State. So they have to play Colorado State, and Colorado State's been a really good team lately. It's a possibility.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Sounds good. They're going to stay at 12.
Not a believer.
I'm just not a believer in I don't trust the committee. I never have. I never will. I think you should go back to the BCS system and go from there. Top 12 teams need to be in there. We're trying to do Cinderella in real life is what I feel like we're trying to do.
I don't disagree with that, and I that's been my biggest qualm with it. Is that Boise State? Sure, they could be qualified enough to be in the conversation, but they should be one of the last teams in, and it should be like with Cincinnati a few years ago with the 4-team playoff, where they got in because they had a good resume. They had a win over Notre Dame. They had, I think, a win over Indiana, and then they dominated the rest of their schedule. So they had 2 Power 4 wins. Boise State doesn't have that. You should have to have a clear, good resume and look like a good competitive team. And they were competitive for half the game against Alabama, and then Alabama pulled away and they kicked the crap out of them in the second half. But I agree with that. I don't like this forced notion that we have to put a G5 team in. And I also don't like the seeding the way that it is, where the Big 12 has to have the 4 seed or the 3 seed or wherever they are. What's even crazier is Boise State could be the 4 seed.
Which is even more wild if they get ranked. So if they're ranked ahead of BYU, they would get a bye week and be at 4. Yeah. And let me just tell you this. If that happens, I will lose my godforsaken mind if they get a 4 seed. I'm going to lose my mind, Joe. I mean, it's just like, look at what everybody else has gone through to get to their path, and you played ass-cheek State besides only week that you played Oregon. Like, I mean, it's just so non-fair for one. It's fair for not fair for everybody else, but one person. You know, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. We will get to our power rankings. It is collusion. We probably shouldn't say that a day after election.
No, inclusion, not collusion.
Oh, well, I was about to say, you look at you over there, always getting political.
Never.
Either way, we are going to get to our power rankings here tonight, our 1 through 10. Also, we're going to give you our game picks.
Yep.
Somebody's in the lead.
You have a 4-game lead.
No, 5-game lead.
Didn't you pick Auburn last week?
No, I picked Vandy.
Okay, the standings are incorrect at the current moment. Then,
well, you better during this break, you better go change them because
I don't have time to change it. Our listeners will know. Our listeners will know.
No,
I don't have time to change it.
75 and 25. You're 70 and 25, I think. However, that rankings.
That's what the.
I do not have 74 wins. See, this is Fugazi right here.
No. Okay, this is why you need to make your picks earlier, so I'm not going off of you writing IDK.
No, you cheated your other co-host Sean a couple of weeks ago, and now you're cheating me. The tally should be 75. I am whipping your ass at the current moment. So
you're up by 5. You're up by 5.
Let the record show That should not be 74. You have cheated.
Okay. There's no cheating. You need to give me your picks and not give me IDK, and then I have to remember what you put down.
Well, you should just text me and say, you got to make a decision now. I'm making graphic.
I do that all the time.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
All right. Then we'll get to why you're making me talk about this game. I have no idea. But at the end here,
there's no other games to talk about. And Notre Dame
I would rather talk about any other game than talking about Florida State. You're forcing me to talk about Florida State and Notre Dame.
I am forcing you to talk about them because we have good representation of Notre Dame fans on the channel. And 2, they're in the national conversation for the playoff. So every game they play for the remaining weeks.
I literally didn't say anything about Notre Dame. I said everything about Florida State.
Well, that's who they're playing.
We wouldn't talk about Notre Dame, but they are playing a team that was 1-8. We just wouldn't.
Well, they're playing Florida State though, so it's a recognizable brand. I'm looking forward to it.
1-8. They're 1-8.
Bad. They're very bad. They're very disturbingly bad. All
right. So we'll get to that at the end. Elk says, talk about Ohio State versus Northwestern then.
No, I'm not talking about Northwestern. You know the difference between the two. We're smart enough to know the difference between those two games.
The Streets are just saying, Joe, that you wanted to talk about Notre Dame because you look at your shirt.
Okay, that's actually not wrong. But again, there were no other games to talk about. God forbid I want to get a Notre Dame. We haven't done very many Notre Dame previews because they haven't played anyone. This is one of their few.
Thank you for admitting it.
Recognizable. Yeah, I'm not going to deny that. This is one of their few recognizable games against a notable brand. They're not going to have another game worth us previewing until they play USC, which is also a shit game to preview.
You're just getting everything you want. You get to cheat me out of my wins.
I'll update the damn graphic. I will update the damn graphic. Okay.
You cheat me out of my wins. You get to talk about your favorite team. I mean,
we talked about LSU on Monday.
Okay, but
we talked about them when you guys played Arkansas, and Arkansas is not very good.
Arkansas was still ranked at 24. I mean, it was still a ranked on ranked matchup.
Were they at the time?
Uh-huh.
I don't recall that.
Oh, they were. Trust me, I remember. Did you know, by the way, LSU's faced more teams in the ranked in the top 25 when they played them than Notre Dame has in a year and a half?
Okay, but
hold
on.
I'm just saying.
I hate using the ranked when they played them qualifier because that doesn't.
Okay, well, let's not even do it as much. Still, still same thing still remains. Even if Arkansas is taken out, they faced more ranked opponents in the last month than Notre Dame's done in a year.
They play in the SEC, and Notre Dame has a very weak schedule. Yeah, they do. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah,
I've never denied that.
Scaredies. Brian Kelly would never. All right, let's get to our good.
But he actually quite literally did do that. So I know that's a terrible.
BetOnline.ag. When we come back, we'll talk about our power rankings. Let's hit the like and share. I'm trying to avoid all this so Joe doesn't get even more mad. Like, share, notification bell, YouTube, subscribe, all that's good stuff. We'll see you on the other side. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back. All right. So week 11 in college football, Joe and I give our power rankings. My friend, go ahead and give yours, your 1 through 10.
Number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Georgia. Number 3, Ohio State. Number 4, Miami. Number 5, Texas. 6, Penn State. 7, Indiana. 8, Tennessee. 9, Notre Dame. 10, Texas A&M.
All right. Oregon, number 1. Mine. Oregon, number 1. Georgia, number 2. Ohio State, number 3. Miami, number 4. Penn State, number 5. Texas, number 6. Tennessee, number 7. Notre Dame at 8. Number 9,
on them than I am.
Ole Miss. Number 10, Texas A&M. Let me go ahead and start off with this. Okay. I put Notre Dame in there so I didn't have to hear your shit. But the truth is...
stop. I'm going to give you more shit about Indiana than I would give you about Notre Dame.
The truth is LSU should be above Ole Miss in these power rankings.
Yes
they
and no.
Beat them. They have the same exact record and they beat them. They have the same kind of loss, USC, Kentucky. The only other loss is a head-to-head to LSU. So if we're going to talk Ole Miss here for just an example.
Wait, so did you not put LSU in yours?
On purpose, yes, because I knew you would freak out if I left Notre Dame out and put LSU in. But
that's not true.
And speaking about Notre Dame, here's the truth. I don't think even in the college football playoff, they should have been ranked as high as they are. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't. Because if you're going based off of eye test and resume, okay, Joe, at the bottom line, I know you're talking about power ranking and all this kind of other stuff. Indiana gets a pass. I'm not talking about them today, but the bottom line is, Joe, what are these teams losing to? These SEC teams that are at the bottom. Now, you can say I'm an SEC homer, SEC bias. Who are the losses to? Okay, now you also have a loss. And the question now becomes, Joe, if everything else is equal, those 1 losses for those other SEC teams, that doesn't matter when you're playing Dookie State and Dookie Water State. Right? Like, I mean, it just doesn't. So, again, I'm putting Notre Dame there because I know you'd freak out.
No. Stop. I really hope that that's not your logic for doing that.
Joe,
I really hope that that's not.
Joe, they don't – in God's honest truth, they have no business being up there.
Then why did you put them in there?
Because
you put them in there so that we can shit on them? Is that why you put them in there?
We got to discuss them because here's the truth.
I'd argue I'm freaking out more that you put them in there and then are taking the time to point out that you shouldn't have put them in there. I would argue that is more problematic and toxic reasoning.
But at the end of the day, they would be favored above those teams that are in the SEC. And they beat A&M in a game 1 under Mike Elko. I don't think they win that game again. They're too beat up. I don't trust in Riley Leonard. I trust Marcel Reed more than I trust Riley Leonard at the current moment.
I don't agree with that part of it. And I think that if they played on a neutral site, I think that game would be more evenly matched than you're willing to consider. I don't think it's a guaranteed win for Texas A&M. I think if they played each other.
I didn't say it's a guaranteed win. I said I think that they would beat them. I think they're a better team now than Notre Dame is. Just because they played in week 1 means nothing to me. And the context of a game 1 under year 1 head coach.
So are we supposed to just like throw out the fact that Notre Dame has that win, or are we also going to throw out Notre Dame or LSU's loss to USC? Like this week?
No, we're not.
Is that not a part of the season? Is that not part of the year?
No. Am I supposed to ignore the other 10 weeks?
What does that have to do with what you're trying to say here?
I mean, in the rest part of the season, you also lost to NIU. And that continues to be missed. So if you want to talk about going on the road and beating A&M in year 1 under a head coach, okay, in game 1, NIU washes that out. It completely washes it out. I'm sorry, but it does. So they're out there, but they're going to get in the playoff based off of the dome, the Golden Dome. If this were anybody else.
Again, I'm like so perplexed on why you put them in there. You get to pick who goes in there. I'm perplexed by you placing them in there. And also, I don't totally disagree with what you're presenting here. It's been one of the things that I've talked about with Notre Dame this year. The minute that they lost to NIU, I have projected and said that it was going to require a lot of extra help in order for them to get into the playoff. Louisville beating Clemson really helps their case because now Louisville is a ranked team and they're in a position where they can win out and they can finish as a ranked ACC team. That's not going to go to the playoff, but a ranked team. Same thing with Texas A&M. Texas A&M probably isn't going to get into the playoff because I think that they're going to lose to Texas at the end of the year, and they're going to have 3 losses, and they're going to get boxed out. But they're still going to have 2 quality wins over ranked teams. Army's probably not going to be ranked after Notre Dame beats them. USC is probably also not going to be ranked. I'm not projecting forward here, but since the NIU loss, Notre Dame has gotten better, and even despite the injuries that they've encountered, they have also consistently gotten better. They've got a lot of young players that are playing really good football right now. You don't know
if you've gotten better in your secondary when you're facing Navy. Sorry. Ben Morrison out. You play Navy. Okay. You don't know that.
We haven't. Navy's not the only team that we've played since Ben Morrison's gone down.
Okay, and who's the other?
We played Georgia Tech. But, like, it's not like Notre Dame. Hold on.
King there? Was Haynes King there?
Haynes King was not there.
Okay.
Notre Dame can't help who they are playing. It's the same argument that we're talking about with Indiana. They can't help who they're playing.
You've been consistent when other teams have also been injured. Haynes King's not there. You're playing a team that doesn't throw, and your number 1 corner's out.
Notre Dame has had plenty of depth at secondary, though, that, again, Benjamin and also Morrison was playing very inconsistently this year. This was not the same level of performance that Morrison. I understand that. I'm not trying to discount his performance and his potential impact. He's going to be a early draftable player in the 2025 draft if he chooses to declare. But I think that this is what gets really confusing with me when we talk about Notre Dame. It's very hyperbolic when you break them down. Like, you're trying to make it seem like they're this 4-loss team that doesn't belong in the conversation.
No, I just don't think that they've truly been tested like some of these other teams. I don't.
Well, the teams that have been tested have more losses than them. So, like, what am I supposed to do with that? If those teams had the same record as Notre Dame, the conversation would be different. But they don't have the same record.
They also don't have the same schedule. And
you're going. Wait. You're basically asking me to guess. You're basically asking us to guess. Like, well, they've got more losses, and they didn't win in those games that were tests.
And I have more answers about Ole Miss than I do Notre Dame. And to be honest with you, if it came down to it on a neutral site right now, I am not taking Notre Dame to beat Ole Miss. It's just not happening.
I don't agree with that at all, because Ole Miss has been extremely inconsistent.
You need to start naming the teams that you think that they're better than. So where do you have them on yours?
Oh, yeah, let's pull that up.
You have them at 9. So again,
perfectly reasonable location. I think that they would beat Texas A&M if they played them again. I don't think that they're good enough to beat Tennessee right now. I don't think that they'd beat Indiana. I don't think that they beat Penn State. I think that defensively, they're good enough to perform well against LSU. I think that they're good enough to beat Ole Miss. I think that they'd be good enough to beat Alabama.
I think score with those teams, Joe.
They didn't need to score with Texas A&M when they played them the first.
Oh my God. They have a brand new quarterback that's been going off, and you want to say they can't? Oh, well, it wasn't a big deal when the kid that got benched is not there no more.
Notre Dame's offense. I don't think that you've paid close enough attention to what Notre Dame has done, and it's understandable. They haven't played anyone.
How do you think that I knew NIU was as close as it was, and I'm texting you in the second quarter? I watch every Notre Dame game just to troll you.
I understand that you do that. Notre Dame, you should know that Notre Dame's offense and their run game has consistently gotten better week over week.
Against no names.
They're not squeaking out wins over those opponents by 5 points. They're dominating them. They've kicked the crap out of everybody that they've played since the NIU loss. And this has been my whole talking point with them. Why they get into the playoff is that you leave no doubt. You smoke everyone you're supposed to play. You at least have that to point to. They can't help who they're playing. But at the very least, if they're beating the shit out of everybody, that's reputable.
Joe, there's not a team on their schedule that they're beating that's reputable.
I believe that they have a higher strength of schedule than some of the other teams that we've been talking about.
Indiana is going to be the only one. Literally, it's going to be the only one. Name a reputable win. Louisville? Is that where you're going? Notre Dame's
strength of record has them at 15.
That's bullshit because they're playing no-name nobodies. What's their strength of schedule?
Strength of schedule has them at
10 what?
74.
Dog shit.
74 is higher than It's obviously not higher than any of the SEC teams.
Exactly. So thank you for making my point.
It's higher than Ole Miss's. Ole Miss is 83rd so far this season.
I'm sorry to tell you, but they're playing Georgia this week, and that's not accounted a part of the strength of schedule. So you can't tell me that.
Wasting too much. We're spending too much time on Notre Dame. We need to move on. I think that you are extremely hyperbolic with the way that you analyze.
It's time that we started to trash them. All right, I picked my battle. Now you go ahead and pick yours.
Let me throw yours back up on the screen here. I don't agree. I thought about this yesterday after the conversation that we had, and this is a bit nitpicky, but I really don't agree
with Penn State.
That Texas should be ahead of Penn State. I think that Texas, despite them playing a very weak schedule as well, I do not think that Texas is better than Penn State. I think that Texas is far more explosive offensively.
Joe, they're 7 points to your number 2 team.
At home. They were playing. Yeah, but wait, hold on. But that's that's not what I just said, though. I'm talking about how their defense played great. They played a really great defensive game against Ohio State at home. In one of the hardest home environments.
Texas was at home and had 50 total yards of offense against Georgia in the first half.
I don't think that transitive property paints that picture.
No,
we've watched both those
teams
play.
Team versus team, right?
Okay. Yes.
If you want to split the hairs, okay, you have Texas on the road at Vandy needing a field goal to win the football game.
Vanderbilt's a harder opponent than most
team.
By the AP poll, they're ranked. Vanderbilt is a harder opponent than most of what Penn State has played. I don't trust Penn State's offense in that matchup if that game turned into a shootout.
And I don't trust Quinn Ewers.
You trust Drew Allard more than you trust Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, I do. You know why? Because against Ohio State, he led them on an 80-yard drive without turning the ball over. Every time in a crucial situation, Georgia, I've seen Quinn Ewers turn over the football. Joe, he literally got benched, okay, against Georgia because he was turning the ball over too much. Sark in the postgame came out and said, well, we had to emphasize to Quinn yet again to stop turning the ball over, and that's the truth. You're right. Do I think from the fundamental piece down that Texas overall is a better team? I'll give you that. I'll concede that. I think they're better on both lines of scrimmage. What I'm not going to give you at the current moment is that I cannot, for the life of me, trust in Quinn Ewers. I can't, and I'm not going to.
I don't think that there's as much separation between – I think that they're right in the same exact level. I think that they are equal to one another. I think that they both could lead that type of a drive against Ohio State.
Well, then fight over your semantics then, because if I got one at 5 and the other at 6 and you have one at 5 and the other one
that's what I'm saying. I'm nitpicking with that. I don't think that Penn State –
But at the same time, if we're going talent versus talent, but stay with me for just a moment. Let's go talent v. talent for just a moment here, okay? Ohio State, regardless of what anybody thinks about them, is arguably one of, if not the, on paper, most talented from athlete to athlete. Would you agree with that?
No, I still would put Georgia there.
No.
And also, wait, the version of...
Would you agree? Just answer the question. I'm not asking you about other teams. Do you think that they are one of, if not
one of, yes, no, okay, one of. Forget exactly the last part. They are one of the best teams.
And I saw that secondary at Penn State run with those receivers all night long and play very tight coverage. What I saw against
no receivers, though. Penn State doesn't have any good receivers.
I saw Penn State's DBs run against Ohio State's wide receivers and cover them at a very alarming rate. And I got to be real with you. If they can guard that unit, Quinn Ewers is going to make a mistake. So if we want to fight over semantics and Penn State and all this, brother, I am not putting Penn State, who was at the 1 yard line and lost by 7. Penn State legitimately being on the 1 yard line when I got 50 total yards against Texas in a blowout. By the way, their defense gave them 3 turnovers. Let's remember this now. It's not as if that Texas didn't have help defensively. Their defense played flawlessly. And Quinn Ewers continued to fumble the bag over and over and over again like he has in his entire career.
I don't like using the comparison of how did Penn State play against Ohio State and how did Texas play against Georgia, because I think at the current moment right now, because Ohio State is banged up, Georgia is a better football team than Ohio State. Wasn't the case coming into the year.
Yeah,
that was very even. So I don't like using that as the talking point. I understand what you're saying with Ohio State here, that they got to the 1 yard line, they got to the goal line, and twice they failed. Twice they couldn't convert. I think that's worse. That's more telling of offensive incapability.
Joe, how many
you have to score points?
Joe, how many times are you going to allow Quinn Ewers to get away with murder?
But this is again hyperbole. Like, this is hyperbolic.
No, but
to point out his issue.
Here's what Drew Aller and Penn State didn't have. They didn't have Will Howard throw 3 picks like Carson Beck did. So we can say Georgia's good. You're right. But Georgia's literally coming off a game where they're struggling to beat Florida in the second half. Joe, they are literally, with 3 minutes left to go, they are struggling to beat them. And you know that.
You're going through like this long ladder of transitive property here.
No, Drew Aller, for what it's worth, has been more consistent than what Quinn Ewers does. That's why the interceptions are the way that they are.
I get that he has had interceptions against Vanderbilt and he has had interceptions against Georgia. I think the collective unit around Quinn Ewers, like we've seen happen with Georgia, Carson Beck plays bad, the rest of the team elevates him, they finish those games. I would much rather trust the collective unit, the team, the coaching staff for Texas than I would trust the collective unit, the coaching staff for Penn State. Again, we're getting into semantics with this. It's a one spot over the other, but if I'm getting down to it, the biggest part is the whole team, and I would argue, but more importantly, coaching decisions, preparation. Sark's a better coach than James Franklin.
I'm going to throw this out there. You say that, okay? Literally, Sark has 1 10-win season. He's going to get to another one. If he goes into A&M and loses, and he loses another playoff game, what you going to say about him?
But that hasn't happened yet, so I don't have an opinion on it.
Oh, okay. But you're moving goalposts on me here to some extent. No, Joe, in 10 seasons, 12 seasons, James Franklin has 10 10-win seasons. I get what you're saying, that he underperforms against the big boys. But outside the Bama win against a team in Bama that, changed overnight, they have also been highly inconsistent. They have the most favorable schedule in the SEC, without a doubt. I still don't think that this Texas team is who everybody says that they are. I don't. I legitimately don't. Y'all, all right. Hey, I bet the house on this. Now, I'm not going to put real money down. Here's what I'm going to bet the house on. They're going to fall they're going to fall, and everybody's going to be like, oh, well, they really didn't play anybody throughout the season. No, they didn't.
They're still going to go to the playoff, though.
Yeah.
Like, if they lose to Texas A&M on the road, they're still. I hope they get matched up with Penn State, and then we can find that out. All right, who else do you have an issue with?
Weren't they lined up with Bama?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Joe, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm not taking Texas in that game. I promise you, not doing it.
Bama's not going to get in based on what we're projecting this weekend.
Yeah.
If Bama loses,
right, they're out. All right, where do you want to go here? Because we pretty much have the same top 5. Where do you want to go here? I'll go here.
You want to talk about Oregon? We're both on the same page with Oregon. We moved more Oregon up one.
I mean, look, we talked about Oregon 3 times already this week. We can, but we have Georgia ahead of Ohio State in ours. I don't know if you want to go there.
All right, let's start there, and then we'll jump to Oregon. We said this last night when the rankings were revealed that we did not agree that Ohio State should have been at 2 over Georgia. I understand that a lot of people want to point out the way that they played against Florida. It was one guy who had a bad game. Carson Beck played very poorly. That kept Florida within close. I think a lot of people discount and don't truly understand rivalry games like that. Florida's better than people give credit for. Florida, if they were playing in the Big Ten right now, and I hate doing that. A lot of people rely on that as the crux of their arguments. But if Florida did not have the schedule that they had at the current moment and they were playing in an easier conference, we'd be talking about them as a playoff team. They're actually playing good football. They're just overmatched
with the Big 12.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt, they would. They're just overmatched with the opponents that they're going up against because they were given the most brutal schedule in the country. Because their record looks bad, it looks like Georgia played a shitty game against a bad team. Not the truth. More importantly, that is one of their biggest rivalries of the season. They're going to go all out and put all their energy into that game, especially when Billy Napier is coaching for his job and is probably going to get fired, but is trying to build up some credibility for the remaining parts of the season. If he beat Georgia, we might be talking about him differently. But separate from that, I think that Georgia, for the way that they've played on a week-to-week basis and when they play at their best, that's what I'm counting on here. When they play at their best, they're better than Ohio State's best at the moment. Think
about this. They're scoring more points when Carson Beck throws one or more interceptions. They score 35 points. When he doesn't throw interceptions, they're scoring 31 points. So the ironic thing here
is ridiculous. That's a ridiculous stat. If that's true.
I'll tell you where I got it. I got it from Jake Crane. Okay. So if I'm wrong, then go blame Jake Crane in the Daily Wire. Okay. But that's nuts. But the God's honest truth is when I look at Georgia, I've seen situations and instances where Carson Beck doesn't turn the ball over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm banking on that. Put them at 2A, 2B for me, though. I still would put Georgia over them, but 2A, 2B. I don't think that Ohio State's done anything wrong enough, really, for us to fight over the semantic. If Ohio State's 2, I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to fight over it, if that makes sense.
So I think Jake's stat is correct. So the start of the season where he was playing cleaner football, 34 points against Clemson, 48 against Tennessee Tech, 13 against Kentucky. No picks in that game. They only got 160 passing yards. Alabama only 34. Auburn 31. He didn't throw any picks in that game. And then this remaining stretch of the year, where he's had this terrible stretch with interceptions, 41, 30, and 34. So some of their biggest offensive outputs have come when he's playing like shit.
Wild.
Yeah, that's an insane thing.
I got it from Jake. It sounds like it is pretty true. So Oregon. Joe, what do we got to say about Oregon? What do you want us to say?
I think I want to still monitor their run defense because we mentioned that in the preview that it's slowly gotten worse and worse. They're giving up 120 rush yards per game. And I don't know if that's just the circumstance of going up against two straight teams that run the football effectively that's caused it to be inflated against Michigan and Michigan State. But outside of that, Blake, they have been the most consistent team. They have consistently dominated, and they have a really good win against Ohio State where they showed when they play at their best, they're good enough to beat the best and to play a really good, well-rounded, sound game. So I don't think anyone's arguing that this isn't a hot take to have them at number one.
They're just the most consistent team, and they don't have a loss, and everybody else does. So there's not a lot to go off of in reference to putting who you're going to put at one. Just stay consistent. I agree with you. I was saying this for 2 weeks, and y'all looked at me like I was crazy. Oregon fans, I still think their run defense is leaky. And then their argument was, well, Ashton Jeanty does that to everybody. No, not what you've been doing. So, excuse me. Joe, I do think they're hitting a little bit better stride offensively, though, which is, you could take it with the running game, but if you're going to do and be who you are offensively like that, I don't think it's a problem. So,
yeah.
All right. Let's get to some game picks here. Now, everybody he changed it.
See, I told you I was changing it.
Okay. We do have the same leader in the clubhouse. I'm 75-25, and Joe is 70-30 on the year. But, brother, I got to say this. Give yourself a pat on the back. We have done 100 games, and you're about 70%. Your boys at 75%. So, look, man, maybe we do know a little something here. Let's go to the first one here. Notre Dame versus Florida State. We're both picking the Irish.
Man, this is a really hard one to pick, Blake. Notre Dame's at home. It's cold. A team from – actually, I don't know what the temperature is in South Bend, but team from Florida is traveling all the way to Indiana. They don't want to be there. Their offense stinks. Brock Glenn's completing 46% of his passes. I think it's time to turn to Roanoke. This should be, assuming Notre Dame doesn't crap their pants, which of course they would love to in this spot. There's no reason to doubt them. We're going to talk about the preview in a little bit, but I don't see a path for Florida State to win this.
They got nothing to lose, and they'd love to upset your
Go
season.
point.
I'm going to tell you that. So, look, man, they still got some pretty good athletes over there. So we'll see on that one. Georgia versus Ole Miss. Both of us going with the Dogs.
I stand by, Blake, what I brought up when they played Texas on the road. Kirby Smart is too good of a head coach to not realize his mistakes and how to correct them, and not to rally the troops and to focus on improving the upcoming week. Bad game against Florida means an opportunity to realize what wasn't working. Why were you getting run all over in the second half? That needs to be fixed against Ole Miss. Most importantly, I don't trust Lane Kiffin in these types of games. I made the mistake with James Franklin last week. I'm not making the same mistake. He has the same track record against highly ranked teams. Very, very shaky at pulling out those games. I got to stick with Kirby.
I'm not going to go that far on Lane. I'm just not going to do that. But
why not?
Because from a fundamental standpoint, I don't know if they're going to be able to run the football on this Georgia team. Outside of Jackson Dart, they really struggle at running the football in moments. I think it's a bad matchup. Just all around, it's a bad matchup. Now, Jackson, here's what would worry me. I think Jackson Dart has been the most consistent quarterback in the SEC this year. I think he's played so good, and nobody wants to talk about it. Joe, he's got to go off. He's got to go off. What's the status of Trey Harris? I don't know, but he's got to go off. I just think that because they're not going to be able to run the football, and I don't know if Georgia is either. Joe, I'm not as confident in this game as you are because I'm not
confident. I know it sounds confident, but I'm not.
It definitely sounded very confident. If Carson Beck does have another game where he throws that many picks, they're in trouble. At some point, they're going to be in trouble, man. You can't keep turning the ball over like that.
And to the, I agree, totally agree with that aspect of things. We're not going to get into the Bobo argument again. This is, and you mentioned this in the preview, this is not a secondary that's going to really challenge him. That's been their biggest weakness. I mean, we watched Brock Vandegrift.
The problem with that, the problem with that though is neither was Florida's. Florida's is worse than the Ole Miss's.
No. I disagree. Jason Marshall is a quality corner, and I know Cormani McLean's been kind of figuring his stuff out, but
I mean, they're 104th in passing yards allowed with Florida. I mean, come on. They're not more elite. I mean, what are we talking about here?
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay. Either which way, okay? If he turns the ball, and Joe, what happens, because this is the best defensive line that they've seen all year. It's not.
Yeah, Texas. You're right. You're right. I think that's also another key factor in this, in deciding it, is how does Georgia's offensive line play against him? And they're back to full health, I think.
Yeah. We're going to see, man. Look, this one's going to be a close one. I think it's a field goal type game here, but I am going to lean with Georgia, even though that game scares me. LSU versus Alabama. I'm going with LSU. You're going with Bama.
I'm doubling down so hard. Actually, not doubling down, but I'm double dipping in the potential jinx here. So not only am I picking them in the preview, I'm picking them in the game picks. And on top of this, on my VSiN weekly segment that I do, where I give out my betting picks on my good friend Joe Serralo's show, I gave out LSU +3 as a betting pick. I'm actually kind of stunned that they're underdogs. In all seriousness, like remove the jinx that I have on them for a second.
If they lose, I swear to God, I'm going to kill you.
I'm not showing up on Sunday if they lose. Remove the jinx for 1 second. I do not want to be the person to pick against LSU when they're an underdog at home at night.
You've been in those.
I'm not doing it.
You've been in those mentions. You've seen it.
I'm tired of making that mistake. And Kalen DeBoer first year is not the year that they get this win. Maybe in 2 years, maybe in 2 years, but not this year. No.
I told you this in the preview, I'll say it again here. If this game was in Bama, I'm taking Bama. Okay.
Yeah.
This game's at night, man, in this place, and I can't pick against them. Question is, can they stop Jalen Milroe from running the football? Can Garrett Nussmeier not turn the ball over? I'm not going to be surprised whatsoever at all if LSU loses this football game at all. It's just something in my gut, though, tells me, though, Joe, as much as Notre Dame fans like to shit on Brian Kelly, man, his teams are always better after a loss, man. They just always are. So we'll see. All right. Michigan and Indiana, both of us going with the Hoosiers.
No reason to doubt Indiana in this spot. Michigan does not have any of the firepower to keep up with them. And we've seen this. Michigan could keep this thing close in the first quarter. And then once Indiana gets rolling, they'll start to pull away. I think Curtis Rourke, to him returning last game, playing decently well and starting to get more and more healthy, they will return to that level of dominance that we were seeing and that they already were doing like they did against Michigan State. I'm excited for that Ohio State game. I think that that's going to be really interesting. I think if that's a close loss, that we need to have a different conversation about Indiana, but we will save that for when that game is played.
Yeah, of course we do. They're just going to blow. They're going to continue to blow teams out. They're really well coached. I think regardless, I think Kurt Cignetti should be one of the top prospects for Coach of the Year and what he's done. I just don't see Michigan. It's a bad matchup for Michigan. So look, Curtis Rourke, I think, Joe, ironically, he's got Heisman numbers. The only thing is that, him being out for that game, how much that hurt him. So we'll see. Miami and Georgia Tech, both of us going with the Hurricanes.
I know a lot of Miami fans might think that you're picking against them with the way that you were talking in the preview, which was funny.
No,
you still were picking them.
Did you go in the comments?
I saw a couple.
They kind of turned a page on your boy. Some of them were mad, and I get it. But there were a lot of comments in there saying, Blake, I agree with you.
Really? I didn't notice that.
Yeah. I responded to every one of them. All the ones calling me out, I looked past.
To that point, though, I said this in the preview. Anyone who wants the full preview, go watch it. I don't think that if there is a game where they slip up, it's not going to be against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's offense is not explosive enough to play that game that Miami has been playing, which is you might get a couple big plays. You might put up more points than you usually do, but we're just going to storm back and we're going to put up a ton of points. I found a clip last year, Blake. I was updating my reel. I found a clip last year that was that I put in there of me describing Washington, and it was word for word what I said about Miami this past week. That like they can just storm back and blow their way down the field and get down there in 3 plays, and nobody can keep up with them. I still think that's a good comparison.
Yeah. I agree with you. I just don't think it's going to be Georgia Tech, especially Payne's King is not there. No. Florida and Texas, Joe, was just announced by Billy Napier that DJ Lagway did practice today, but as of right now, both of us are going with Texas. So that's a big deal that Lagway may be back here.
Yeah, I don't think that Florida, even if Lagway plays, is going to be able to have enough energy after everything that they put out there against Texas this past week. But God, it would be funny. It would be really funny if DJ Lagway plays and he has a bunch of big plays and just completely pieces up this Texas defense. But I just don't foresee that happening.
If Florida can run the ball on them like they did against Georgia,
yeah,
I think this game could be a little bit closer. Now, again, if Lagway plays, this is a completely different game. But because we don't know if he will at the current moment, Joe, I got to go with Texas. But I say this in all seriousness. If he does play, both of us need to give a – I know you'll probably still lean Texas, so will I. I'm just going to be interested in that game about Texas. I'm just saying I don't like it. I don't like it. Vandy and South Carolina, both of us going with the Gamecocks here, Joe.
I was debating doing Vanderbilt, and I also would not be shocked if Vanderbilt doesn't win this game. They're at home. It's the worst home field advantage in the SEC, obviously, because there's going to be so many traveling fans coming from South Carolina. At the same time, they're extremely unpredictable, and Diego Pavia could completely take over. I got to still lean with the better team, the better run game, the better defensive line. They should have a pretty, not an easy time, but they're equipped to win this football game and continue their trend.
This feels like, to me, Joe, remember when, 2022, when South Carolina went on that little run at the end of the season? Remember they beat Tennessee and Hendon Hooker and them, and then they went on the 4-game run. Remember they upset Clemson at the end.
And then Notre Dame dunked on them in the bowl game with Tyler Buckner throwing 3 picks. That was important to add. I had to. Was that not? I mean, that's important context. They went on a run, and then they played Notre Dame, and Notre Dame beat them.
Was that before or after Marshall? I don't remember.
Okay, come on. That has nothing to do with that.
Oh, okay.
That was after Marshall. It was the same year.
Oh, okay. Regardless, I still think that it's the same type of deal here. They're kind of finding a little bit of stride. Maybe we did count on Shane Beamer. Now, how do you respond after emotional win? I almost picked Vandy too, because how do you respond after emotional win like you did against A&M? So, Joe, here's the real truth. If I think we need to back off of Shane Beamer, if he can go in here after an emotional win against A&M and they win against a scrappy Vandy team, how does Vandy respond to being bowl eligible? They got a big monkey off their back too, so we'll see. Yeah. Oregon versus Maryland, both of us going with the Ducks.
Same type of thing with a lot of these games. This is a lot, not like a very competitive slate of games that we've got this week. Oregon, too dominant defensively. They've got the corners that can cover Caden Prather and Ty Felton. Not going to be much of a challenge. And they're flying to Oregon for this game as well.
Yeah, teams that have gone from the Midwest or the East Coast to out West, it's hurt them more than West teams going to the Midwest.
Yeah.
Right? Teams on the West going to the Midwest, you would think it would be the opposite, but it's not. With that being said, I just think Oregon's too good. I do think it's going to be interesting to see how Maryland passing game attacks them. They have been very good there. They're 8th in the country in passing yards, so we'll see, but I'm going to go with the Ducks. I would not be surprised. I'm going to throw this out there. When you're that efficient throwing the football, Joe, these kinds of games historically can stay close very early, right? But it's going to be the depth at the end that I think Oregon wins this one. All right, a couple more here. Clemson and Virginia Tech. I did not go with Clemson, did I?
You did go with Clemson. You texted me Clemson.
Yes, I did. Okay. Clemson, I got Clemson, I guess, and then Virginia Tech.
You don't sound very confident in that. Look, I think I've said that this Clemson team's fraudulent. I think that Virginia Tech, while their season hasn't gone as planned as we had predicted and thought that they could play, I think defensively they're built well enough to cause problems for that Clemson offense. And we saw what Louisville did. Even though Clemson had a really easy time running the football and put up some pretty big yardage totals, they were not able to convert in the red zone. Mm-hmm. I think that the Virginia Tech defense is going to be able to make a couple of plays, disrupt Klubnik, maybe get a turnover, and Kyron Jones could do his hero ball stuff that we saw against Miami to win them the game.
I never picked against God, and Dabo's a godly man. Let's roll with him. Give me the Tigers here. Colorado versus Texas Tech. Both of us going with the Colorado Buffs.
Horrible matchup for Texas Tech because their defense is booty. Another one of the betting picks I gave out. Colorado is a 3.5-point favorite on the road. They're going to win this game by more than 7. That defense is not built to keep up with Colorado. Unless there's some devastating injury, there is no shot that they're going to be able to keep up with them.
I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. I'm going to keep this light. I'm a really big fan of Coach McGuire and the boys.
Yeah.
I love Taj Brooks. If they committed to the run a little bit more, I would take Texas Tech. And I love that Texas Tech put us in their hype videos. I'm sorry, though. It's just too bad of a matchup for Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Give me the Buffs. All right. Let's finish this out here. Joe, we got a couple super chats. Elts with a $5 super chat says, Joe, Notre Dame is basically running QB for dummies. Passing concepts are able to throw because Riley Leonard sucks at passing the ball.
I understand this, and yes, it's something that I've noticed that a lot of what they're doing. But in the early weeks of the season, they were like really dumbed down. There was not a lot of difficult decision making, and Riley Leonard was still failing in those decisions. I think what's different, if we look past that, the passing game has opened up more, and they're figuring out which concepts work for Riley Leonard and the receivers. But what is something that's important for this conversation? Denbrock's really creative at scheming things up as in the run game. They've been very, very creative at getting guys the ball in space, in right spots that they're going to be able to succeed the best. Jadarian Price has been playing really well. Jeremiah Love has been a spark plug for them. And then I think the way that they've just said, you know what, Riley Leonard, you are a great runner. We're not going to try and turn you into a passer. It's just like with Daniel Jones and the Giants, when they play their best is when they just say, Daniel Jones, you're going to run the damn ball. You're going to run QB counter. You're going to run QB power. We're just going to give you the ball, and we need you to be a big, strong runner. And that has worked for them. I don't know if that's going to help them win any games against SEC teams. Probably won't, but they have improved since that NIU game a ton.
If Mike Denbrock is not being creative offensively in the passing game, it's because he doesn't trust his quarterback. Yeah. Go hard or go home with a $5 super chat says, if Ole Miss upsets Georgia and LSU beats Bama, how far does Georgia fall? They'd be 0-2 versus LSU's common opponents.
Common opponents conversation gets really it gets murky, but I don't think, man, that's hard.
No, you would put LSU above Georgia because he'd be right. Yeah. Go hard or go home would be right. You would. So here would be the
Georgia would be like 9, LSU would be 8. Ole Miss would be 7. Because they all have 2 losses.
But then you'd have to put Ole Miss in there somewhere because they beat Georgia, so they'd have to be.
What's I'm saying? So Ole Miss 7, LSU 8, Georgia 9, or maybe higher than that, 6, 7, 8.
Well, then who are you taking out? Because by your math, you would probably put A&M at 10. Who are you taking out? Can I tell you who you're taking out?
Probably Notre Dame. But but here's something though that needs to get brought up though. Texas won't be, but Texas should be dinged in that situation. Like Texas should drop in that situation.
I mean, here's the thing. I argued about this whole Notre Dame thing. And now you're coming back, go hard or go home. My man's always there.
Yeah, but that's a very specific, complex situation.
No, it's not. I mean, if Ole Miss can beat Georgia, LSU can beat.
It's not. Yeah, sorry, it's not a complex situation, but it's a very specific one. It's something that hasn't happened yet. We're talking about the current moment.
Mm-hmm. Jay with a $10 super chat says, as a Penn State fan, I always knew that Joe was a hater. He's actually pretty based, so that's not my bad. Would love a PSU Notre or that. So that's my bad. Excuse me. Would love a Penn State Notre Dame playoff game. Love the show. Thank you so much, Jay.
That's currently what's projected at the moment, that Notre Dame would face off with Penn State, and I'm for it. I mean, I'd be for it if Notre Dame played against them. I think Notre Dame could win that game. I don't think you agree with me. I'm not a Penn State hater. I'm just realistic. Beat Ohio State next time. I picked you. I picked you to beat Ohio State.
That's what you're really mad about.
No, I'm not mad about that. I'm not mad about that. But when you don't win that game, I have to take that into context.
Okay. Let's wrap it up with Notre Dame and Florida State here. Joe, a game that we probably would look in the preseason slot and say this is going to be a big-time matchup, Florida State versus Notre Dame. However, Florida State is, I think we thought maybe they'd be 8-1 coming into this, but instead of 8-1, they're 1-8. Your thoughts on Notre Dame and Florida State?
Yeah, it's no hot take to say that this Florida State team has been terrible. They have been abysmal. Every single statistical category, they're at the bottom. They've got bodies. They have guys on defense that could be first-round picks, but have not played up to their potential on any degree. There's no reason why Notre Dame shouldn't beat this Florida State team handedly. They should beat them by 20-plus points. They are not playing good, cohesive, consistent football. And at quarterback, they don't have an answer. Brock Glenn, Luke Kromenhoek, DJU isn't even really in the mix on the depth chart at the current moment, the last one that I saw. I will say this, though, and I know I say this often. This is a game where if Notre Dame comes out flat, that they 100% could lose it. Like, 1,000%, where Marvin Jones Jr. and Patrick Payton could have a big game that could lead to a turnover from Riley Leonard that leads to a short field for a touchdown for Florida State. I think that Notre Dame, and the way that Marcus Freeman's been talking about coming into this game, that they're taking it very seriously and they're not wanting to have another NIU type of a situation. But I can't help but remember when they lost to Marshall, how they played against Stanford. Stanford was awful that year. Awful. Terrible. And Notre Dame's offense could barely move the ball. Their defense played well, but they could barely move the ball, and they lost the game because they could not get points on the board. So I say this with it, and I think it's important to preview this. I know we were joking about it earlier. It's important to talk about this game because it sneakily could have upset potential that nobody wants to recognize.
Sneakily?
Yeah, that's a word.
Sneakily is not a word.
Let's look it up. All right, what do you think of this game, though? Sneakily is a word.
It's not a word.
In a furtive or sly way, that's what sneakily means.
No, it's not a word. Here's the bottom line. Florida State's 132nd in total offense. They're horrible. They're a horrible football team. I really don't know why you're making me preview this. Now, I do agree that Florida State does have some athletes that can present some problems. Joe, the problem is they're dead last in the country, or dead last in Power 5 in total offense. They're almost dead last in the country in total offense. They can't move the ball. They can't score. That's their issue. So I know that you're trying to say that, maybe things are sneaky and maybe this can happen. No, it's not. No, it's not going to happen.
I hate how confidently you're saying that.
It's not going to happen.
I don't disagree. I think Notre Dame has every reason to win this game.
Let me tell you this. If you lose to Florida State, there's no way that you're getting in the playoff.
Oh, no, 1,000%. This is why I'm bringing this up here, is that if there is a remaining game on their schedule, I don't think that Army presents a problem, especially with Bryson Daly seemingly pretty banged up. USC maybe because it's on the road, but they're a hot mess at the current moment. This is a game where if you're not prepared and you're not paying attention, that you could get upset. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't. And I'm pulled up here. When Notre Dame lost to Stanford, it was in October in 2022. The final score of that game was 16-14. I remember that game vividly. They couldn't move the freaking ball. Drew Pine was the quarterback, and
Riley Leonard's better than Drew Pine.
Yes,
bro.
He's obviously better than Drew Pine, but they had so many problems trying to get their offense going. And Stanford had no right to play a good defensive game against them because the remaining games on their schedule, they were giving up like 40, 30 points to everybody that they played. All I'm just trying to explain here is that Notre Dame needs to continue what they're doing, which is playing dominant football and kick the crap out of an opponent that clearly doesn't want to be on the field.
Fair. I think they're going to do it.
I think that they will too.
All right. We'll see.
You could have suggested a different preview. You didn't want to talk about it.
I mean, Joe, I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know where there's an avenue that they lose, brother. Like, I just don't. They cannot score. They're 132nd in scoring offense. It would be, Joe, it would be like Kent State, who's right below Florida State in every offensive statistical category. Go look it up.
No, but I don't think that they're not comparable to Kent State, though. I don't think
from a statistical analysis standpoint, they are.
Okay.
I mean, how else are you going to frame it? Do you think that they should be 132nd in total yards?
No. I know. I mean, you're right. I don't disagree with you. I'm just. Okay.
I mean, I don't know. But here's the thing, though. As God is my witness, as Irish Catholic Jesus as my witness, if y'all lose this game, I'm never letting you live it down. That's what I know.
I pray that doesn't happen.
You better.
I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
All right. We'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good one. Peace.